Good evening and welcome to another episode of Guardians of the Republic. Jonathan Cole, as always, with Tony Hughes,
Amen.
and Greg Frank is joining us this evening as a special guest. So we're going to talk about a couple of
Preaching on
topics
that day.
again, kind of carry over from our last conversation, but events in the state of Minnesota and also the Trump land grab, for lack of a better word. So,
Land grab.
yes,
What else can you call it?
exactly.
Inspiration.
So starting in Minnesota, there's an article all over the internet. So obviously, this all started with the shooting a couple weeks ago now, but there's a lot of uproar about the disruption of the church service Sunday. The news stories have been all over the place, but Stephen Miller, who MAGA people told me a year and a half ago would have no place in the government, but now seems to be running it, said that local law enforcement have been told to stand down and surrender, that federal law enforcement will take care of everything in the state of Minnesota. So that's
Oh,
why
really?
there was no police response at the church. But it turns out that's the narrative they want to push. They're saying that there's some analysts making a comparison that the video of the shooting of Renee Good is kind of starting to stack up the same as the footage of the Tet Offensive did for Lyndon Johnson. That polling is starting to show people don't approve and they're kind of tired of government's behavior. So
Yes.
how do they take care of that? They create drama. So there was no police presence when people disrupted this church service, and that's what was all over television. So I just want to get your thoughts on it, Tony.
Well, so to begin with, I think that the protesters who went in the church were dead wrong. I think it was the wrong thing to do,
Yeah.
both legally and morally. Okay, so whether the guy who was the pastor worked for ICE or not is irrelevant. I
Yeah.
mean, there were people there to worship their Savior, their Lord Jesus Christ, or whatever God. It could have been a mosque. It could have been a synagogue. Doesn't matter. People were there exercising their free rights to worship in the way that they see fit. There are laws that try to prevent people from interfering with your worship in your worship
Definitely.
place. So they were completely wrong. And
Yeah.
now, setting that aside for a second, because I in no way condone what they did. But now Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice are going to kill, a housefly with a nuclear weapon. So now Pam Bondi is in Minnesota. They're having press conferences. They're bringing the Department of Justice in. They're going to investigate every one of these protesters. Okay, they deserve to be investigated. They deserve to be prosecuted. If they are guilty, if there's probable cause, they should be indicted. They should be prosecuted, and they should be jailed. But does it take the Attorney General of the United States of America to show up? I mean, I think they're just killing a
Well,
housefly with. I mean, it. Nobody was shot.
well,
Nobody was injured. It was. It didn't last. Apparently, it didn't last that long. It was the wrong thing to do. But again, it feeds the MAGA narrative
right.
that.
Well, I guess.
But I gotta find the. I gotta note the irony though. The irony of we're going to investigate a demonstration where no one was injured. They were not where they were supposed to be, but no one was injured. Certainly, no one was shot and killed.
And there was
But the
very
Department
little
of Justice
property damaged.
but the Department of Justice has announced that we're no longer even gonna investigate the shooting of Renee Good. So, I mean, so someone actually I have never heard of any officer-involved shooting where there was no investigation. Now, I
Yeah.
just think that's federal or state. I just think that is such a travesty of justice that the people of Minnesota deserve to at least pay lip service. I mean, I thought that the investigation was at least going to be lip service that the FBI was going to conduct because the FBI was going to work with BCA of Minnesota until DOJ said no, BCA is not going to be involved. And then you got JD Vance saying they have absolute immunity, which is not true. But at least you have an investigation to say, should this ICE agent have been walking around with a camera in one hand and a gun in the other? That seems like an unsafe practice. You know, when he took two shots from the side of the car after and let's give him the due. Let's say the first shot was justified. I don't think it was, but just to make that argument, let's say the first shot was justified. Were the second two from 90 degrees that did hit her, were they justified when she was already passed or passing? But no investigation. So I'm just going to note the irony there. We'll investigate what we want to, we'll prosecute who we want to, and we won't prosecute who else who we don't want to.
And
And then
unfortunately,
we and then Pam Bondi has the audacity to come up and say, "No one is above the law unless you're ICE agents in Minnesota. Apparently, and you shoot someone. Apparently, you're above the law."
or unless you're one of the protesters that happened numerous times through numerous of the cities in 2020 and 2021 and 2022 and pretty much all of last year in all the college campuses. It's, I mean, I understand the irony here that the DOJ is investigating these protesters and everything, and it's ironic how they're investigating them and not the police shooting. But it's actually a good idea. They're actually investigating something because there have been protests going on through the Black Lives Matter protesting and all the damaged property, and all the different property damage done, at all the different college campuses across the nation against the Jewish industry and against the Israel war and the Gaza war, and all the different protests have been happening numerous places around the last 8 or 9 years, and nobody's investigated anything properly. And everybody, and I think that's what I think the lack of investigation, the lack of the arrests, to the degree to where they should have been, is what has enabled and empowered a lot of these people to just basically think that they can do or protest anything they want to without any consequences whatsoever. And so it's,
Wow.
I mean, I think it's about time that the DOJ does investigate. Now, I do agree with you. I think they should also investigate the shooter as well of the ICE agent. I think anybody who was, who resulted in death at the hands of a law enforcement officer should be investigated by far. But and I think hopefully they will eventually do that. And because the family
Doesn't sound
deserves
like it.
that. I know it
Yeah.
doesn't sound like it right now, but I think one reason why Pam Bondi stepping out, the same reason Eric Holder stepped up during the Obama reign. I forgot who the Attorney General was. Oh, yeah, Merrick Garland actually was almost absent and
A totally
AWOL
worthless
during the
attorney
entire
general. Yes.
during the Biden administration. But I
Yeah.
think they're stepping up because the state
Well,
attorney general in Minnesota is not stepping up, and so in lieu of them not stepping up, somebody has to step up and get some sort of law and order going whenever the people in their own state aren't doing a damn thing.
Well,
but
I'm gonna
Greg,
take Tony's irony a step further. All of this Black Lives Matter damage, if you quantified it in dollars, how does it stack up
Billions.
to the January 6th attack on the Capitol?
A lot more. A lot more, as far as revenue goes, a lot more damage. I mean, they took the police
I'd have to
precincts and
see that.
everything in Oregon and Colorado and the stuff in Seattle, Washington, and all the damage they did there in Minneapolis and Minnesota and Michigan. I mean, they had different places that they were just torching and burning down buildings and hurting people and killing people. And it was the damage or the police enforcement on that was very laxed.
but Greg, here's the big issue I have as a Republican, as a conservative Reagan Republican. MAGA drives me crazy
I agree.
with whataboutism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They
I
try to
agree.
justify everything they do by saying, well, what about Biden? What about Harris? What
No,
about Holder? What about Garland? Who
I don't think
gives
it's
a
what
rat's
about
ass?
it. I don't think it's a whataboutism. I
No,
think it's
no, but no,
basically
well, you kind of did because you said, well, nobody investigated that, so at least you're saying, well, what
I think
about
it's about
the lack
timeism.
of investigation there? And I think it doesn't matter because it's in the dead past. And I know good and well Trump is at least using this to gaslight his base by saying, what about what Biden did? What about how terrible things were? I'm fixing all that. I'm doing that. And he's using this as justification, and it's not justification. Biden's not the president anymore. Trump is
I
the
agree.
president. Do
You're
your own
right.
thing. Do your
And the
Exactly.
own
thing
thing and be judged based upon what you're actually doing
right.
right
I
now,
agree.
not what
And I
And
think
Biden
the
did,
thing
not what
too is
Obama
I
did.
agree. And the Department of Justice is supposed to be the Department of Justice. And that being said, it's supposed to enforce law and order throughout all the different states. Now, granted, I don't agree with Stephen Miller or anybody else is saying that the federal authorities supersede the local authority. That's just
well, he
ridiculous.
took it
I
a
mean,
step further than that. He said that they had
that's
ordered
stupid.
local law enforcement to stand
Yeah,
down.
That's just
yeah,
ridiculous. I
yeah. It
mean, I
really
agree with
is.
you
I
on
mean,
that.
and he's like a lot of what they say, there's that one grain of truth in it because,
Yeah.
as I
Well,
understand, a
speck.
federal law enforcement officer, if something happens while he is doing his job properly,
Right.
then he or she does have
Right.
immunity from state prosecution. But the question is, did he do his job properly? And that's where That's where you're supposed to have an investigation.
Exactly,
Well,
and I think the whole
And not
immunity
a
thing
whitewash.
happens is that if everybody's doing everything properly, there's nothing to be immune from if you're not breaking any laws. And so, I
exactly.
mean,
Right.
that's kind of the whole concept of immunity. The immunity is
Yep.
supposed to be protecting you when you are breaking the laws. And that being said, they should be breaking the laws when they're law enforcement officers, law
Well, and
enforcement, not law breaking officers.
it's
Mhm.
even
And
beyond
so
the
it shouldn't be
shooting.
relevant.
What protesters are protesting about is the flagrant disregard of ICE
Mhm.
agents for their own published guidelines on how to handle these situations.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's public record. I mean, they're not supposed to provoke incidences. They're not supposed to block
Oh,
vehicles with their body. They're not supposed to do a lot of things, and they're just
They're not
ignoring
supposed to
it,
sh
doing
they're
whatever
not
they want.
they're
Now
not
the
supposed
news
to shoot a suspect that's fleeing.
exactly.
Really, that
And
first
actually
shot,
unfortunately,
if
a lot of cops do that.
And actually, but the thing is, they have no jurisdiction over United States citizens. Technically, if they're having an issue with
right.
United States citizens, they're
Yeah, true.
supposed to rely on other law enforcement
Yeah,
agencies
local
to
law
handle it,
enforcement. Yeah,
and they're
local law
not.
enforcement.
Yeah.
Now, there's a new news article today about another ICE incident in Minnesota where an Asian man was drug out of his house in his underwear. He's been a citizen for
Mhm.
almost 25 years, and
Mhm.
this is all over the news. Taken out to a field and held in his underwear. And then finally, like, oh, well, I guess you are a citizen. Then they took him home and never apologized.
Yep.
This all happened in front of his grandkids, his kids.
Wow.
It's, and there's no just cause. Why are they targeting American citizens? So that's another issue.
Well, I
They
wanna talk
should have
about the
been.
racial profiling of the targeting because
Mhm.
they don't to the extent that there is, in fact, a list.
Mhm.
Here's a list of people that we know came into came in the country, they entered under false pretenses,
How do they
they
have a list if
committed
they're not
crimes.
documented?
Huh?
How do they have a
That's
list
the
if they're not
interesting
documented?
question.
They would come in as now they came in as surrendered and they took them into processing
Oh,
centers
so they're
and
only
then they
going
came.
after the
These are the millions that came in because remember you saw the buses. They were picking
yeah.
them by the busload at the borders and taking them to processing centers where they would all claim asylum. And then they would get a court date, from like 3 years from now, and a phone, and then they would turn loose.
Mhm.
And so they do know who a lot of these people are, and they probably do know some who have in fact committed crimes. And I don't think
Yeah.
anybody is really opposed to actual criminals who have been arrested and convicted, and then because we would do that with anybody who's on a green card. I mean,
Yeah.
if you
Right.
got a green card, you get arrested and convicted, you're out. I mean,
But
that's
e
the way it should be.
yeah. But even
Yeah.
beyond, that, it's,
But
again, those guidelines is they're not even supposed to enforce anything but immigration law.
yeah, but
And
see,
you have
here's the
cops
problem though.
flashing about, "Here we're going after these drug dealers and these,
Yeah.
pu human
Well,
traffickers." That's not their jurisdiction.
even even ICE's own statistics say that the people that had been arrested and deported, 70% had criminal records, so 30% didn't. Now that's their numbers. Now,
Yeah.
who knows whether the numbers are
Right.
really right? I give them the benefit of the doubt. But the problem I've got is that they are still, I would call it like stop and frisk from New York. If you're
Mhm.
brown, if you have brown skin
Yep.
and brown eyes, and you speak with a Spanish accent, you're getting picked up. There's just no question. Or you've at least got to now prove that you're a U.S. citizen.
Or if you're
Right.
I
Asian
just
or
have a
Indian.
fundamental, and I go back and there's a scene in the movie Hunt for Red October, and Sean Connery is talking to his first officer, and they're talking about what it's gonna be like in America, and the first officer says, I'm gonna, live in Kansas and raise rabbits or whatever, and they talk about travel from state to state, and he asks Sean Connery, says, and no papers, and Sean says, no papers, but now papers.
Yeah.
So you must now
I
have your
agree.
papers. You're
I
a
agree.
U.S.
Right.
citizen,
Yeah.
and you must have your papers.
It's
I'm
sad.
sorry, but I just don't think U.S. citizens have to carry their birth certificates. I
Yeah, it
know a
shouldn't.
certain person we're on Facebook with, Jonathan, proudly
Mhm.
carries her miniature of her birth certificate in her purse so she can prove her citizenship. But hey, she's an old white woman. ICE
Yeah.
is never going to come after her.
Unless she protests, but that's not gonna
Well,
Exactly.
unless
happen.
she protests. But I tell you what, if you're black, brown, or Asian, and
Yeah.
you have those features, ICE is going to come and ask you where you live, where were you born? And what paper? Let me see your identification.
And a lot of the issues with that person we're discussing is where do they get their news and information? And so I did my research. The story about the Asian gentleman, I can't remember
Mhm.
his name off the top of my head, but is on every news source, including all the foreign. It's even in the Russian and
Mhm.
Chinese news media. It's not a single mention on Fox News or
Nope.
Newsmax. So, and these
From a news
people,
nation.
that's all they watch.
I've checked that out several times. Every time
Yes,
I see something
that's
that,
all
that
they watch.
I know it's been so broadly reported, I will go search the Fox News and the Newsmax websites to see if there's any mention at all. Zero.
No. And
Zero.
again, these people sole source their news information from
Yeah.
Right.
those 3 networks, the Fox, Newsmax, OAN.
But
And
they
if
don't
they're
care.
not, and so that's why it's so quick. I told Greg that earlier. It's like Pavlov's dog. They've been
Yeah.
conditioned to say fake news when the bell rings, you know?
Cognitive dissonance.
Exactly.
I did a post on Facebook about that the other day. It's where, we have our confirmation bias. We want to only read things that fit our narrative. The things that
Right.
Right.
we don't want to see that what we believe in might not be true.
Right.
And that's
Yeah, I mean,
sad.
and that's a big problem with both parties and both followers and
Oh yeah.
everything. So I think it's not just a Republican thing or just a Democrat thing, as a lot of Republicans say. I think a lot of that in this political climate that we're in, people just really want to believe what they're comfortable in, and that's just a little world to get into. Like I told Jonathan, I mean, I
This
read
is
every single thing there is. I mean, I read liberal,
I do too,
conservative,
Greg.
moderate.
But
I
I
don't
really
really care.
it
I just
seems
read words and
and
punctuation.
maybe I'm just being more sensitive in my old age, but it seems worse now because
It is.
Trump has expanded
Well,
the power of the presidency, the power of the executive. He's expanded it, and he's got this base, this MAGA base. And I do lump MAGA separately than I did the Republican Party because we talked about that, I think, last episode. And they do not want to hear anything else other than what Trump says. And they know. I mean, even the ones I talk to that don't say it publicly, but they kind of acknowledge that he talks out of his ass half the time. Well, here's what he really meant to say. Well,
Yeah.
I kind of always believe you listen to what the person actually says.
Yeah.
And if they say X, you should probably believe X, not Y, not Z, but
Yeah.
X.
Well, not only that, but Trump says X, and then his followers say, "Oh, well, you
yeah,
took him
well,
out of context. Oh, and
Exactly.
obviously he was joking, or he's
They're
not
trying
being
to soften it.
serious." Yes,
I
he's
like
being dead serious.
I like to agree with part of what you are saying, but I do think, and this is just my opinion, because I've been in on the inside of it for a long time doing campaigns. I think it all really started with the recount in 2000 between Bush and Gore. I think that's where the bed sheets got split totally, and the moderates basically got thrown out to the wolves, and
Mhm.
basically everybody compartmentalized so much on the right or compartmentalized so much on the left between the
Well,
recount and the stolen election and the Supreme Court and everything else. And then basically everything with Iraq, after Iraq kind of went downhill very quickly, everything just, split, very bipolarly politically. And I think, Trump helped exacerbate a lot of it with the birther movement. And then you had, the Obama movement and everything else on the left side exacerbated a lot with, going against the right. And there was no common ground or no commonality
well,
with anybody crossing the aisle at all. And that's
I'm
been going
sure
for 20 years now.
you guys remember who Luke McCoy was,
Oh, very well.
WCOA.
Good
I
friend.
remember
Good
something
guy.
he said in the 90s when Clinton did something. I forgot. It was big news.
Which one?
I forgot because he always attacked Clinton regardless.
Well, there's a lot to attack about, you know?
He said,
It's Clinton.
Monica Lewinsky, but yeah, that's about it.
Uh,
But
China?
he said, I forgot what it was, but then he says, "I can't wait for Rush Limbaugh to come on so I know what I think about this."
I
I mean, he
remember
was
that
being
show.
facetious, but it was so true.
It
I mean,
is.
We know
so
what
I
they call. You remember what they call Rush's
That was a
followers? The Ditto Heads. The Ditto Heads. Ditto. Love
but,
Rush too. I still thought for myself, but I did enjoy listening to him.
I didn't.
so Tony's
I
the
basically
guy
mimicked
was,
him.
Ronald Reagan, who I respect so much more
Exactly, yeah.
nowadays. I've always been a JFK guy, and I thought of a quote he had. I had to look it up real quick, say it right. But he said, "Too often we enjoy the comfort of opinion without the discomfort of thought."
Right.
Yeah.
People
Exactly.
just sling it out there and they get their backing from the news source they choose to listen to, and like everything else is fake news. And
For
it,
sure.
it's kind of like a centrifuge. The more this country spins, the more the particles separate, and
Yeah.
we're too bipolar now. But
Yeah, well,
Well,
when it comes to fake news, I mean, you and I had talked about this before. I mean, I was in the journalism world for 15 years, and I did see a lot of fake news in the print world, and where I went to conferences and basically, but it wasn't politically biased. It was basically you write what the advertisers tell you to write.
yeah,
And basically it is more cronyism than it was political bias at all. Basically, if the ad guy is at Channel 3, Channel 5, or NBC in your local affiliate down there in the Panhandle, or at the News Journal in the Panhandle, if the ad guys did not want you to cover a story thoroughly or properly, you did not cover a story that way. Otherwise, they'd make sure everybody pulled the ads out of the paper. It wasn't just them, it'd be them and their friends. And so there's
yeah,
a lot of bias. And that I think that was what lended a lot of credibility to when everybody started throwing that red herring out there. Fake news, fake news, fake news.
yeah.
Because, they realize we both see a car accident, but there's no article about the car accident. There's an article about something else right next, maybe a block away from the car accident. And so it's a lack of thorough journalism, and it's not really the journalist's fault because the writers were all there writing the stories for years. It's
Hmm.
a people controlling the dollars of that media outlet who did, who basically wanted things. It's kind of like the BP oil spill. Whenever the BP oil spill happened in Pensacola, for days they were saying that no oil ever hit Pensacola. And that Pensacola beaches were still white, although there are tar balls all over the place. It's
Yeah.
still white. Come visit us. Come vacation here, please, please, please. We need your money. Come visit our beach, damn it. And
Well, it's also
and at the
funny.
same time, we're telling people, I mean, there's tar everywhere, guys. Come on, think about
Well,
it.
not only that, but we're claiming white pristine beaches, but yet we're sucking billions of dollars into the Triumph Fund to
Yeah, and
repair
people,
the
well,
damage that is
well,
still sitting there because you know whose dad is sitting on this huge glacier and he's chipping off a little bit with an ice pick every now and then and handing it out as favors.
Well, I will say this, I was a community bank CEO in 2010 during the oil spill, and it was, pretty devastating to our local
it
economy,
was
Yeah.
and I will never forget a
definitely.
photograph, 2 photographs I saw. The 4th of July was on a Sunday that year, and there was a photograph taken at the Pensacola Beach Fishing Pier at 9 o'clock in the morning. It was a
Mhm.
beautiful sunny day. The beaches were white, the water was emerald green, there was no oil in the water right that minute. And the picture looking down toward where the Margaritaville Hotel was, there was not a
Mhm.
single person on the beach. If you look back toward where the Hilton was, there were about 4 or 5 people just walking along the beach. Parking lot was empty, 9 o'clock on a Sunday, 4th of July.
Mhm.
And so that was a devastating,
Yeah.
and I would have gone to the beach that day. I mean, I would have at least showed up as a local. But
Right.
and typical 4th of July, if you're not on the beach by 9 o'clock, you're not getting on the beach.
But yeah,
So
definitely.
it was a huge hit to our local economy. It really
I
Yeah.
know.
was.
I was
So
actually there the other day when Charlie Chris was actually at the governor was at the time over on the beach at that time, and I was with a group of people who were escorting him around and everything, and it was. I mean, it became pretty bad pretty quick.
Yeah,
yeah.
it
So
really did. And what was tricky though was that you get tar on the beach, but then the tide would come in and it would throw white sand up on top of the tar. So if you're
exactly,
Mhm.
looking at the beach, it does look like it's a white beach,
Well,
but
it's
the
if you
underneath
tar
ever
it.
was
been to the
actually
beach in,
about 6
Corpus
inches
Christi
below.
if you ever been to the
Huh?
beach in Corpus if you ever been to the beach in Corpus Christi, Texas,
It looks
there's
nasty.
nothing but tar
Those are
balls under the
nasty.
sand, and you
Yeah.
step on it
Well,
that
the
you can't
Gulf
get
well, the
off your
Gulf
feet.
the Gulf leaks oil all the time. I mean,
I
that was
It
know.
actually
does,
one of
yeah.
the things that
That's a
helped.
nasty beach. I mean,
Yeah, it's a
it
nasty
uh,
beach.
but
We're
we can
digressing
close
though.
out this, Minnesota segment. I had a kind of a quote that kinda got my attention. It said, "Terrible things are happening outside. Poor, helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. Families are torn apart. Men, women, and children are separated. Children come home from school to find that their parents have disappeared." You know who said that?
Who?
Anne Frank in her
Yeah,
diary.
yeah,
So let's think about that a minute.
yeah.
That's where we're going. But a lot of that has to deal with the imperial presidency of Trump. And the other subject, of course, is still not only Greenland, but Venezuela,
You just keep.
Cuba, Denmark, all of the above. So he's
Well,
doubling down on obtaining Greenland.
yeah.
He's threatening
It,
tariffs to Europe, and
at the
now they're threatening
strategic,
back. Where does this all end?
well,
So, that there's a 1951 military agreement between the United States and Greenland and
And
Denmark involving Greenland that, and it's really not that long. I've read the whole thing, and now just to quickly summarize, basically, the United States can do anything it wants to militarily in Greenland. That's
right,
just, that's just the Kingdom of Denmark has already given the United States permission to do essentially anything it wants to do militarily in Greenland. Now, like with anything, they want to be consulted. They do want to have a vote. They want to have a veto. But if actually, I think we had like 6 installations on Greenland at one point in time. We closed 5 of them. We've only got
yeah.
one
mhm,
left.
Who
But
closed them?
I think Denmark would be hard pressed to say, well, you can't have those 5 back, and you need to put more monitoring. You need to put combat forces. I mean, I don't think there's anything in that agreement that
Right.
would prevent the U.S. from doing any of that. I heard um, Alex Grinchwich, who actually is a buddy of mine, he is the Supreme NATO Commander, call sign Grinch. He's an Air Force 4-star. He was the wing commander of the 53rd Wing out at Eglin Air Force Base, which is the
Oh, really?
operational test wing. And that's
right.
where I first met Grinch, and I've kept up with him in his career. He's a really, really good guy. And he gave a speech. I think he was in Sweden last week, and he gave a speech basically about Greenland, and he kind of said, we need more NATO cooperation with Greenland, but he never said we must own Greenland to protect the United States interest or to protect NATO's interest. I'm really curious. I posed this question to a buddy of mine, and he's in the overall scheme of things, he's a nobody in the military. He was he was an attack helicopter pilot. He flew Cobras and then flew Apaches for the Army. When he went off active duty, went in the reserves, and he then retired out of the reserves. And he is retired now. He's a big MAGA guy. But I
Mm.
asked him, I said, if you were on active duty, if you were called back to active duty tomorrow, and they strapped you into your Apache helicopter and said, fly to Greenland, and there's gonna be Danish troops there, there are gonna be NATO troops there, but we're taking the island of Greenland tonight, and here are your targets to destroy. The troops, the facilities. Are you firing your weapon? He said, hell yeah. Hell yeah. I get an order from the president to go, I'm going to go and fight.
Yeah.
I said, you're going to go shoot against NATO allies. Yep, if that's what the president orders, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Scared
Well,
to scared the poop out of me, okay?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I've known this guy for 30 years.
You should have asked him if he would do the same thing if
Military
it was
thing.
Biden that gave him the order.
And I have posed that question on Facebook. I have yet to have and I still have MAGA friends on
Yeah.
Facebook. They do ding at me. I have yet to have the first MAGA person come back in and say, yeah, if Biden said it, sure. If
Yeah.
Obama said it, absolutely.
I would agree
If
with
Clinton said it,
that. I mean, I was in the Air Force, and basically, I was an F-15 mechanic, so I was just a regular a ground guy. But everybody I talked to in the Air Force, they didn't agree with Clinton. He was the president at the time. But if he said to do it in Bosnia, do it, and they didn't like it, but they did it. And whenever Bush became the president, they didn't like a lot of the things that he said to do, but they did it because it's part of the whole chain of command and the chain
but
of
there was
custody and
legal basis.
everything.
But there was legal basis for Kosovo.
Yeah,
There was UN
it's
support.
debatable, but yeah.
When we went after 9/11, we had NATO assistance with
Well, I agree.
that.
That's the only time
We
And
have
actually NATO
now
has
this is
legal
ever
basis.
been invoked, ever.
There's just
yeah,
no
I mean,
legal
I agree
basis
with
to go on.
I mean, I agree with you as being a MAGA guy, I guess, here in the group, and I do understand that when you're in the military, you do follow orders, but to do attacks on your own allies is a little bit out of the norm. It's
Well,
against the
no,
grain, actually.
it's freaking illegal.
Well,
Well,
I mean,
and
it
I
that's
would
go
be
that's a war
back
illegal.
crime. I think that's a war
International,
crime.
yeah, according to international law, yeah, but we don't. Who cares about international law nowadays?
well, but
Nobody cares about
obviously
international
not
law.
our current
Obviously,
president.
nobody's. Well, not any of the around 200 or 300 presidents don't give a damn about international law. I mean,
Well, I think
they're committing genocide in numerous countries that nobody's talking about.
Well, there's only, let's see,
Nobody step I mean, America's really the only country that ever steps up to help anybody. I mean, nobody's
but
stepping up to help anybody else. I mean, Ukraine and Russia, nobody I mean, it took us a long time to do anything with Ukraine, what little we are doing, but nobody in Europe was gonna do a damn thing in Ukraine until
There
we
were
actually
50
started
there
pushing
were
everybody.
50 Danish soldiers that were killed in the aftermath of 9/11 that when they went to
Yeah,
war,
yes,
when we invoked, what is it, Article 5 of NATO
right,
after we were
and that had
attacked,
never happened before.
and they came in and they fought alongside us and
mhm,
50 of them died.
yeah,
So they have
Even,
spilled Danish blood as part of NATO on behalf of the United States. Now,
and
right,
even Germany was
Germany,
involved in the military
Great
operation
Britain,
first time
but yeah,
since World War II.
yeah.
yeah,
No, NATO came to our rescue when we asked for it, and now
I
we're
mean,
gonna
and I
abrogate
would
that.
debate whether we needed to be rescued,
Well, not,
but
I
yeah,
mean,
at the
I
same
but I mean,
time, but
I think
but
we're
it's
writing
the
the check.
they
it's the
came to our
principle.
aid. I
It's the
mean,
principle
it's
of the thing.
we could have gone in by ourselves, but they all joined in like the treaty was designed to do. I read
Well,
the other day when Nixon visited China and he was having a little debate with Mao Zedong, and he kind of talked about, how the Americans won World War II and other wars. And he was kind of calling Americans the aggressors. And Nixon says, no, you can't do that. He says, think about it. We won World War II, but we didn't seize territory. We helped rebuild
that's right.
all the countries that we defeated.
Destroyed. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's he said that's what Americans do.
and that's
Yeah.
what
So
we should
every
be doing.
president, with the exception of James K. Polk and McKinley,
Mhm.
are the only presidents that ever land grabbed.
Mhm.
Mexico and the
Mhm.
Philippines and some other islands of the Pacific. And
Mhm.
My
now
question
Trump
is, how
wants to
come?
do it.
Well, I mean, my question though is, you were just talking about the nation building and fixing all the areas that we destroyed. How come the last two or three presidents, and Trump included, nobody's really, we go in, we carpet bomb areas, we blow up the areas, we destroy all the infrastructure, and nobody wants to go in there and rebuild it or put everything back for the people who are actually the ones victimized by all of that because of their horrible governments and everything. And we were attacking the governments, not the people, but the people were innocent bystanders in the whole process. And nobody's gone. I mean, Afghanistan, Iraq. I mean, nothing has been. We haven't done anything to really go in there and
Well,
rebuild
I
them
think
all
that
back up
well, I
to a
think there's
certain
a
degree, in my opinion.
well, I think there's a cultural issue there. There's certainly a religious issue there. I mean, Afghanistan kicked the Russians out. Well, they kicked the Soviets. It was Soviet Union back then.
Yeah,
Afghanistan was the Soviet Union's Vietnam, like ours was.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think part of it is it's just so freaking dangerous that even and they did not want us there. I mean, you think about Iraq after we tried to put Iraq back together. You think about Libya.
hmm
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it has just been incredibly dangerous for American companies to go in and Americans to go in because there's such a deep animosity toward the great Satan. I mean, and I think it's, and I'm not trying to throw shade on the Muslim religion, but there's an issue there,
yeah,
and this is why, we had wars in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and why we're still having an issue with Iran and Syria, and Libya, and a lot of these African states that are highly Muslim. We had issues with the Philippines, with the Muslim population in the Philippines years ago.
yep,
I don't know that it's necessarily a lack of wanting to. I think it's just a practical,
right,
hey,
Safety.
we can't, in order to provide security, we would have to militarily occupy that
yeah.
nation,
Well,
and that's just not what we do.
and that's kind of my point is Iraq and Afghanistan are not the 51st and 52nd states of the United
No,
States.
no.
That's what Trump is already saying. There's an article in the paper today, and he put it on Truth Social, of a altered map showing Canada, Greenland, Venezuela, and Cuba as American states.
How much
Yeah.
of
It's
this is
it's on
trolling?
display in the Oval Office. But I
But
mean,
Yeah, but how much? That's not realistic.
but that's something that a kid does, Greg. That's not something that the
It
leader of
is.
the free world is supposed to be doing.
but he
What
is a
about, I
kid.
mean, if we're gonna make them, what about Guam? What about Puerto Rico? What about the U.S. Virgin
I
Islands?
agree. I
I
agree. We
mean,
should make the U.S.
I
territories the
mean,
states
they
first.
are they are U.S. citizens, but get no vote in Congress or for
Exactly.
president.
I
Yep.
mean, I
And
think
there is
that
no more And
I
I've been
agree.
to Guam. There is no more critical piece of dirt to the United States of America in the Pacific than the island of Guam.
I
Right.
agree. And I mean, I think that there should be a first in line to get statehood over. I mean, I think that if I were a Guam citizen or a Puerto Rican or a Virgin Island, I'd be pretty pissed off that all these other
But
states are going to be jumping ahead of us to get U.S. citizenship and
the
U.S.
Republicans believe
representation.
if Guam becomes a state, if Puerto
Blah, blah,
Rico
blah,
becomes
blah.
a state, if the U.S. Virgin Islands becomes a state, it
Yeah.
becomes a Democrat state, not a
That's
Republican
Well,
state.
9
well,
more
they,
That's why
electoral
it won't
votes.
happen.
Yep.
well, they need to get over that part and just campaign better, you know?
But
And
it's
so it's still a different narrative.
I mean,
You
and what
know,
has Greenland got? I mean, seriously,
politics.
Greenland has 30,000 people, and
Yeah.
we're going to give.
It's basically a sound of half a Scandinavia, or I guess half of a Chipley.
Yeah, yeah.
every state
It's
gets
not
2
even the size of
senators
Fort.
and at least 1
It's not even the
representative.
size of Santa Rosa County,
I
Exactly. I
know,
mean,
population
but
wise.
it's but every state gets 2 senators and 1 representative
Yeah,
at a
yeah.
minimum. So,
I think this
but
whole thing is
also
trolling. It's all
I,
trolling. And granted, you're right. It should be done by the president of the United States. I mean, but it's, it's who we voted for and, or who the country voted for. And, he's been trolling ever since The
you know,
Apprentice.
well, and I understand that being coy
That's
about
his
the military. He
behavior.
doesn't take it off the table. And I'm not a lawyer, but I think I played one for almost 40 years when I was in the banking business. I felt like.
Oh,
You know, what I learned is if you put a gun to somebody's head and force them to sign a contract, that contract's not enforceable because they were coerced into
Mhm.
signing the
right.
contract. If you're the leader of the most powerful military that the world has ever known, and you go to a small country like Denmark and you put that proverbial gun to their head to say, and to all Europe,
Mhm.
Greenland or else. Well, that's not really a deal. You haven't cut a deal. You've used the might that the United States has to basically land grab. It's not a if you want to make a real deal, you take military off the table. You should never put it on the table. But you
Right.
say, look, we're gonna go try to negotiate. We're gonna find a way in terms of money, in terms of support. We want to show value to the citizens of Greenland to becoming U.S. citizens. Let's show the value there. You don't have to make it about the carrot, not the stick.
I
The
And
agree.
I don't know what's going to wind up happening with Greenland. Obviously, I really hope it's not military. I hope it
It's
is
not
just
going to
nothing
be.
but Trump bluster.
Yeah,
It's not
we
going to
But
have
be.
if
a
it's
national
but take it
precedent.
off the table. Don't go pick on Europe. Don't go alienate our allies. Trump has this he posted his private text messages with
Mhm.
European leaders on True
Yeah.
Social last night, including the French President Macron.
Yep.
And Macron's statement says, I do not understand what you are doing on Greenland. So Trump posted. I mean,
Yep.
so now what are you now saying to your allied nation leaders that I may wind up putting your private messages to me on True Social?
The same thing he did to Lindsey Graham whenever he put Lindsey Graham's cell phone number out back in
He is
2014.
and to go
And
back
that's who Trump is.
and write to the president of Norway or the prime minister of Norway that, well, since I didn't get the Nobel Prize for ending 8 wars, I'm probably not as inclined toward peace anymore. Trump is a petulant child. And when he does not get his way, he throws a hissy fit.
Exactly. Well,
So, uh,
today
so,
he
so Greg, you're not MAGA, but you're Trump supporter. Can you say with
I'm not
100%
sure.
certainty?
Okay, I'm a conservative. Okay, I don't
Okay,
support.
but do you
I'm not.
believe?
Not driven by personality or persons at all. I'm driven by
I'm
principles
just
and
asking because I do
issues.
take it you're more Trump supporter than me or Jonathan are.
Well, probably
Could
most
you
likely.
state with absolute certainty that Trump's not going to use military to take over Greenland?
No,
Well,
I
I'm
can't.
gonna throw you a
I can't
different
say that at
zone.
all.
I don't trust Donald Trump or the people around him like Stephen Miller or Bannon and Stone. Who's to
Well, I like
say
Bannon, but
we
Miller's
get
crazy.
but who's to say, all right, maybe
Uh,
we'd get it peacefully, but we get Greenland. I
We're
don't
gonna take
trust that
Greenland.
Trump wouldn't turn around and give it to Putin, you know?
yeah.
Oh God, he wouldn't do that.
Yes, he would in a
We're
heartbeat.
not giving Putin anything, and there's no love or anything. I mean, this whole Putin
And
bromance.
there is a huge bromance between those 2.
There's a huge bromance.
Yes.
Okay, no, I just respectfully disagree.
But today
I'll
he
leave it
pulled
there.
more of the economic card. Well, if you don't, I'm gonna these huge tariffs I'm gonna put on you.
Yep.
The response was immediate, "Hey,
Uh,
hey, we own, about 35% of your national debt. We can call that in right now.
yeah.
Yep.
We can also enact tariffs." And then there was a politician in Germany today that said all of Europe will boycott your World Cup in 2026. You know the money that would cause in this country because
Oh,
Americans
yeah.
don't like soccer. Europeans and Hispanics come to America to watch the soccer. And if they
Yep.
didn't come, that would hurt all of the hotel and restaurant industries in
Yep.
all of these host cities.
Well,
Someone
Jonathan,
explained it a while back is that a demagogue who wants to be an authoritarian has to create constant chaos and pretend to be the savior. And
today the
that's what
today
this
the
is another
Dow
instance of.
Today the Dow dropped 870 points. The S&P dropped. Well, the Dow was down 1.76% in one day. The S&P was down 2% in one day, and the Nasdaq was down
Uh,
2.4% in one day. And the bond market sold off, and the dollar sold off. It was Sell America Day. Now, is this a
Mhm.
good day to buy America? Maybe. Hopefully, it is. Think about how many billions and billions of dollars of value was lost today just because of the petulant child in the White House fighting over Greenland. And now threatening to impose additional tariffs on European nations because they don't support the land grab. And we probably won't have time tonight. We'll have to probably delay this until the next one.
Yeah.
But the committee of peace or whatever it was that the board of peace that he's which is, I guess, Trump's new UN Security Council. That he wants everybody's got to buy in for $1 billion with a B. And Macron says, "Look, this is not just about Gaza; it's about the New World Order, and I'm not going to participate." So now Trump's going to impose a 200% tariff on French wine and cheese to force Macron to go along with what he wants. So, as an American who happens to like French wine, you're now going to tax me more
Uh-huh.
because you're trying to force a French president to join an organization he doesn't want to join because you're a petulant child and can't get your way.
I wouldn't say the
Exactly.
petulant child part because I'm respectful to the president of the United States, but I mean, I do
Well,
agree with you that it
Kevin, fall
is.
back to like one then.
I
Okay.
do. I do agree with you. I do agree. Okay, I do agree with you that using that leverage for myopic reasons like that are is a little bizarre and weird. I mean, I understand the whole tariff war thing, and I think all tariffs should be equal. I think actually nobody should have tariffs at all. I think that'd be wonderful.
I
But
agree too.
this whole using it as leverage thing to basically, as you put a proverbial financial gun to their head it has to be used a lot more sparingly and a lot more calculatedly, and I think it's being used too recklessly, in my opinion.
Well, there's, you know, the idea of tariffs, if used properly, is a nation
It is.
producing something, flooding the market with a product or service that is actually hurting American industry. Okay, well, let's tariff that.
That's what
It
Reagan
Yeah,
should
did in
be surgical.
'87.
It should be surgical,
exactly.
not a shotgun,
That's what
and
Reagan
definitely
did in
Right.
not to be
'87.
used. Definitely not to be used just so the president can force a,
Mhm.
a world leader to do something he wants him to do,
I
because
agree.
those tariffs are still a tax upon the American people. The
Exactly.
American people ultimately pay that tariff. The idea that an importer will absorb that forever is a joke. And one man should not be able to unilaterally impose that kind of taxation upon the American public.
And my thing is, okay, if you want to make tariffs our revenue source like it was 200 years ago, fine. Get rid of my income tax then.
Yeah.
Exactly. And abolish the IRS.
So you're trying to increase revenue, but you're not cutting spending and you're not giving us tax relief. Anything,
Well,
we're paying more taxes because the goods are going up.
it's a lot easier just to go to a national sales tax.
Oh, I've said that for years,
I,
but
I agree.
Or as
all of the
regressive.
tax attorneys and accountants
Yeah,
of the world have been fighting that forever.
and they always will.
But
Yeah.
Too easy.
at this stage of the game, with the cost of living being as high as it is, what would the number be?
That's simple. It's simple math. I had actually
Yeah.
looked it up once. As you look at how much revenue the United States brings in through income tax in a year, and then you look at what was the cost of consumer purchasing during that same year,
Right.
and see what the percentage is. That's your
Mhm.
tax percentage.
I mean,
And you
it'd
can
be
still
about
give a
19 or
tax
20 cents.
credit for the lower income people so that national sales tax is not totally regressive upon the poorest
Exactly.
of our population. But that would be such a small amount, such a limited amount that the IRS would need to fool with. But then these billionaires who pay attorneys mega dollars to get their tax liability down to zero, but they're still buying the fancy jets and the fancy yachts and the fancy houses and the fancy clothes as they purchase things, that tax becomes consumption driven, and that we don't have to don't worry about estate taxes anymore.
Mhm.
I agree.
Inheritance
Yeah.
taxes, all that's gone.
Well, it's
You
like
know,
I told
and you
someone,
tax when I get ready to go buy that $100,000 car, that's when I pay.
no, well, that's what I told someone a while back living in Florida where we don't have income tax, state income tax, we have sales
Mhm.
tax, but like when I go purchase something, my tax liability is met. I
Yep,
don't have to keep
it's
records. I don't
done.
have to report it a year later. I don't have to get an accountant to tell me how to report it
Right.
or a lawyer to help build me a shelter. It's
You don't have to depreciate it.
buy this bottle of Coke and I pay 12 cents sales tax and my tax
Mhm.
obligation is met.
That's
It's
right.
So
that
what do you?
simple.
So real quick about Florida, I just want to bring it to the recent property tax issue here in Florida. What do y'all think if they get rid of property taxes and it's going to be on the ballot? Nobody's going to vote against it. So what do you think they should use as a remedy to replace that money with?
Well, my thing is, why is the governor of Florida pushing this when it's not his tax?
I know.
The state gets no money out of property. It's just another gimmick. He's like Trump. It's another
Yeah.
gimmick. We'll get rid of
I
taxes.
mean,
Yeah,
But how are we going to fund local government?
I mean,
exactly. I mean, Tony, you're
I
a
mean, I live in
banker. I mean,
Alabama
how would
now.
you? Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm in Alabama, so I haven't really kept
Oh,
up with that much. But what alternative have they suggested?
They haven't.
man.
I mean, what I heard, well, what little bit I heard was that they would tax that there'd be a real estate tax on your primary residence, but they're still going to tax commercial. They're still going to tax rental. They're still going to
Yeah.
tax second homes.
Right.
So people that have second homes here still pay property taxes.
Yeah.
Right.
They'll
The
probably all go
hotels
up.
and condos and the shopping malls and the apartment complexes are still paying property taxes.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
again, that's still, if you're going to pay property taxes on apartments, then those lower income people that don't own a home are still paying property taxes
Mhm.
Right.
because they're having to
Yeah.
reimburse the owner of that
Right.
apartment complex.
Exactly.
So it seems like a gimmick to me.
It
It is a
is. I mean,
huge
because
gimmick.
it's only for homestead. It's only for homesteaded property. So,
Yeah,
it's probably going to end up making everything else rise to compensate for the loss there. And
of
that
course it
being
will.
said,
Of course it
apartments
will.
the rent's going to go up, not down.
Yep.
Commercial rent and commercial properties are going to go up, not down.
Just
And
because
Well,
of the
so,
regressive tax.
and
DeSantis threw
it's
out
not thought through at
you
all.
can have local sales tax to offset. You
Oh,
know,
yeah,
we
wonderful.
can't, charter counties and not even non-charter counties. How do you get a additional sales tax? You have a local option sales tax vote. And
Yep.
how many of those have passed in the last
Yeah.
10 years? Almost
Yeah,
none.
your regular
Almost
So,
half
none.
cent, everybody's happy with, but if you're gonna raise it like a penny and a half, 2 cents, I mean, that's not gonna work. I mean, I think Escambia County has one of the highest sales taxes in Florida already, and so it's a good idea and concept. It's wonderful clickbait. It's wonderful red meat for everybody who wants to cut
Mhm.
taxes, and it's probably a good process for his wife to run for governor and screw over his lieutenant governor who thinks he's running for governor too. And so it's going to be a mess. And so I have no idea why they're trying to hang it out there like that, but
because he still
it's just
wants to run for
weird.
president in 3 years. So
Yeah.
he's trying to build points. But in the end, it's reckless as usual because,
I'd much rather see
like the
Florida.
Santa Rosa County budget. Um, 54% of it is completely the sheriff's department. Now, that's not just
Yeah.
patrolling, that's running the county jail,
Exactly.
Yeah.
staffing it, feeding the prisoners, housing the
Mhm. It's
and the
gonna,
rest most of the rest of it is either public education
yeah.
or fire district
Now they say this, they're gonna keep public education exempt from any of the cuts. And so the
I
cuts
don't
are
Oh,
see
just gonna
really?
how.
be
No,
and
he's
So
what
there's
talking
still gonna
about
be property taxes.
eliminating
yeah.
So there
property
will be property
taxes.
taxes. It'd be so much easier if Florida would just say, look, we're going to exempt people over 65 years old from paying property tax up to
That'd be
$700,000
perfect.
house. And then, okay,
Right.
so you can have your home, you can have a nice home, you're over 65 and you're exempt from property tax, all of it. And then
Yeah.
Right,
let
500,000.
those who are still working for a living, let them keep paying. And maybe they'll obviously have to pay more, but at least then, you could say, well, I'm giving a tax break to people that are not in the prime of their life from an earning standpoint. So,
Well, let's
Right.
even take it a step further. What if we just made homestead exemptions, whatever the value is of your house, period, the one that you live in, and
well,
then have property taxes on
I think
all
we
of the
should.
all of the investment properties?
Yeah, I think we should cap it because I mean, there's no need of having somebody live in a $3 million house and be 65 years old and still paying no property tax. That's pretty extravagant. I mean, I think you're gonna have a
Well,
hard time making I think that argument to the bulk of the population. But if you said, look,
Right.
700,000, that's a nice house, but not an overly extravagant house. I think in terms of Florida, and like 700,000 and under, that's your homestead exemption, and
Well, I
well,
then
I
wish
think
they
adjust
do
for
it.
the majority of the
your cost
tax
inflation
burden
every
should
year
come
after that.
from investment properties. It's not your homestead, it's your slumlord, and you bought all these tax roll shacks and you remodeled them and you rent them out for ridiculous fees. That's where your property tax should come from.
Yeah, but I
Oh
think it's
yeah.
all a show game to steer away from the complaint about homeowners insurance. That's a real problem. It's not the people's
Well,
property taxes that's a real problem. It's the insurance that's a problem. And I think this whole thing is a
I had a rental
distraction to get everybody
house.
to stop talking about that.
I had a rental house in Fort Walton Beach. I wasn't one of those slumlords like Jonathan's talking about, but I did have one.
Yeah.
It used to make money, and in the last 4 or 5 years, the insurance has just gone absolutely insane to the point that I was barely breaking even off of it. And so
Exactly.
fortunately, my tenants wanted to buy
That's
it,
a
and
real
it's like, "Oh,
problem.
thank you," and I sold it to my tenants.
And
I
how
was
are they
thinking about a
regulated? They're
specific
regulated by
instance.
Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Back when I was a project manager doing construction projects and we were renovating all the historic properties on NES Pensacola after Ivan, the base commander at the time in 1 year purchased 43 tax roll shanties, for lack of a better word,
You
all
did.
around Navy Base, Warrington, and everything,
Maybe a point. Yeah.
refurbed them and was renting them out.
Mhm.
And it's like, wow. I mean, it's a great retirement plan, but
Mm.
that's who should be paying more property taxes. So
How ethical is
That's a
that?
that's a,
we questioned it, but we didn't.
buying tax property is kind of a dicey thing because, even when you buy the title or you buy the taxes, you then have to go through a legal process to quiet the title. And there's still an
Hmm.
Right.
opportunity, I think a year afterwards, for the owner to still come back in and redeem the property. Now they have to pay you everything you got
Hmm.
in it and whatever you've
Right.
added to it. But it's still, it's you could spend a lot of time and effort and really not wind up with anything if they bought it back out again.
Yeah. Well, a lot of
Yeah.
these were, this is more indigent people that really were never going to be able to reclaim that
Exactly.
property. It was
Yeah.
targeted.
I
It was
remember all that.
targeted tax roll
But
purchases.
now keep in mind though, you don't buy it just for the taxes. I mean, that can be
Yeah.
your bid, but it
Right.
is an auction and there are other
Yeah.
Yeah,
people
it is. Yeah.
bidding and
Right.
But he
whatever
had
it
some
winds up
outside
selling
help,
for.
but he had a very, very organized plan, and he won 43 of those properties in 1 year.
Yeah.
So,
But when they
it
buy
was
it,
kinda interesting.
but the procedure is once you bid against somebody else, if
Mhm.
there is anybody else there bid, whatever is over and above the tax amount does go to that homeowner.
Right.
So
Right.
you could argue that they probably didn't want to sell their house, but it did get sold for a market value, and they did receive the net proceeds after the deduction for the taxes. So
I don't think it worked out that way in these cases, but it was because we did our own little private investigation because we were kind of at odds with Roik at the time.
surprised that there, if it was homestead, I'm surprised that there was any tax liability at all.
Well, I mean, some people can't afford to pay $50. Saw some of these houses, they were literally about to
They're
fall
shanties.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
that was what he
Brownsville area
targeted.
and yeah,
I think he
Warrington, Navy
targeted
Point.
houses that there was no hope
Mhm.
of him paying for it, so
Was probably or it might have been from one slumlord to another.
who knows? But anyway, so we've, kind of exceeded our time, but
We did.
another good discussion here, and so, we appreciate everyone's attention, appreciate Tony and Greg for joining
Mhm.
us this evening.
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate y'all for
Greg, it
having
was
me.
good having you on. Good
Yep,
having you on,
Yeah,
Greg.
it's
we were
boom.
gonna continue this concept. Like I said, we call ourselves Guardians of the Republic because even though we're different political persuasions, we still heartily believe in the sanctity of the U.S. Constitution,
Definitely.
and we have to protect that regardless of which
Oh,
party
yeah.
or which man's in the White House.
Yep,
We're
that's right.
we're going to call bullshit, and we're
Yes,
going
we
to
We
do
are.
it
do.
loudly.
Not a problem.
But and who knows by next week what else is going to transpire in all of this.
Oh, lots more.
Lots more.
Lots more.
Yeah.
So, again, we
Yeah.
appreciate everyone's tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.
That's cool.